what do you think is the biggest misconception that people have about index funds? The Simple Path to Wealth is basically a testament to index funds, right? So what do people still argue with you about when you talk about index funds?
Well, that's kind of two questions, but I think the first question, the thing that rubs my fur the wrong way is a backhanded compliment that I occasionally get. And the compliment goes something like, talking about the book, oh, this is a great book for investing for those people who really don't want to take the time to learn about it and just want to go the easy path. And, that's the vast majority of people. So if you don't want to take the time to learn about investing, you can do indexing. And my response to that is, well, I appreciate the fact that you like the book and you think it's valuable for those people. But it's not just for people who don't want to learn about investing. If I thought there was a more powerful way to invest than indexing that took a little more effort, that's what I would have written about. So I write about indexing because it is the easiest approach, it's the simplest approach, but it's also the most powerful over time. And so that's why that comment, even though it's meant most often as a compliment, kind of rubs my fur the wrong way. And I spent decades, by the way, being a stock picker and by extension trying to pick actively managed funds that were run by stock pickers. So I spent a long time resisting indexing myself and looking for that slightly better way to do it, or even massively better way, which is what I was hoping for. But even if I found a slightly better way, that would have been the book I would have written.
Do you think the problem with index funds is usually in life the simplest answer isn't the great answer? Like if you want to make a lot of money, you got to go to school and become an engineer. Or if you want to do great things, you're going to put a lot of hard work into it. But index investing is one of the things that's the opposite. The least amount of effort generates the best returns. What do you think about that?
I think that's true, and I think it is counterintuitive because most of the things we do in life, the more effort you put into it, the better your result, right? If you want to learn how to play the violin, the more you practice, the better you're going to do. If you want to play basketball, the more time you're on the court, the better you're going to be. But investing, almost in a counterintuitive way, the more you fiddle with it, the less well you are likely to do. My daughter, for instance, she's really the one I wrote the book for, so she's kind of the model I have in my mind. She's extraordinarily bright, but really has very, very little interest in investing. But she's smart enough to know that she needs to know enough to handle her money, because if you know how to handle money, life is a whole lot easier than if you don't. And I tell her, in many respects, that's her superpower, because she now knows the simple couple of steps she needs to take. Invest in index funds, hold them forever, and put as much money in as you can whenever you can. And then forget about it, which is very counterintuitive, as you said, but that's her superpower, because Jessica will never be tempted to tinker with it. She probably won't even notice if the market drops 10, 20%, maybe a major crash she'll notice. But because she's never going to be tempted to tinker with it, because she's going to keep putting money in it consistently, her lack of interest in the subject, when she has that kind of basic stuff that's, if I can be self-promoting in the book, her lack of interest actually is one of the more powerful things she can do. I have two kinds of readers that come to me. There are people like my daughter, and that's really who I write for. And then, of course, because it's investing, there are people who are really kind of interested in investing. They think it's cool, and that's great. I love to have those people there, but they're the ones that are probably going to do less well, because they're the ones who are always going to be fiddling with it and tinkering with it. And by the way, that describes me, right? I'm always tempted to fiddle and tinker, and I did it for a lot of decades.
Yeah, I think there's a famous Warren Buffett quote that said people with exceptionally high IQs aren't the best investors because they always think they can figure out some advantage, and they usually can't.
Coming here?
No! I guess it could be an insult.
Even as stupid people can do this, Carl.
Well, you said you're a tinker, but it's interesting what Warren Buffett says, and I know he's left I think 95 or 99% of his money to index funds. He's like, this is what most people should be doing.
Well, that's what he tells his heirs to do, right?
Yeah, and with that said, Berkshire Hathaway hasn't beaten the S&P 500 in a long time, maybe like once in the past 10 years, but he has not been able to do it, one of the greatest investors of all time. But I always think about that, like if Warren Buffett says the smartest people in the world aren't the best investors, and that's why they think they can figure out some advantage, and they can't. So intelligence, again, it's back to the simplicity thing. It's one of the few things in life where high intelligence might hold you back.
Well, I don't know if I'm one of the smartest people in the world, but I will say that, index invest, it's counterintuitive in the sense that, at least for me, and I think for a lot of people who are pretty smart and are kind of into this, you look at it and you say, well, wait a second, if it should be easy to beat the index, all I have to do is avoid the dogs. If I just avoid the really bad stocks, the really bad companies, then I should be able to outperform. Or if I just pick the really good companies, if I just go with the Googles and the Teslas, and then I should be able to outperform over time. And the problem with that is, first of all, the research indicates that in fact isn't what happens. Even if you're a professional and have all the tools that money can buy at your disposal, because today's high flyers, we were talking about this before we started, when I was young, Sears was one of the most powerful companies in the world. It built one of the tallest buildings. In fact, I think you told me the tallest building in the world it was tallest for I don't know how long. And now Sears is kind of a joke. I mean, things don't stay the same. So today's high, powerful companies, like Xerox and like Polaroid and like I'm a few decades old. I'm sorry, like Google. They're maybe tomorrow's old news. And by the same token, the dogs of today might be tomorrow's exciting turnaround stories. And the problem is you don't know. And that's the advantage that indexing gives you, is you always are owning everything, and those that prosper rise to the top and you benefit from that. I don't have to predict which stocks are going to do best. I know I'm going to own them because they'll rise to the top of my index funds. I don't have to worry about which ones are going to do poorly because I know those will just kind of fade away and be replaced with new blood. By the way, the Buffett quote I thought you were going for was, he said something to the effect, he was asked why so many people do so poorly in the market. And he said, well, in 1900, the market was something like I'm going to get these numbers wrong, so forgive me. The market was something like 600, and it closed the century at 14,000 or something like that. He said, you look at that and you say, how could anybody lose money in a market that does that? He said, the answer is they try to dance in and out of the market. They try to time the market.
Yeah, there's a famous Peter Lynch quote around that too. I think it goes something like, people have lost more money trying to time the market than they've actually made in the markets, or something like that. I didn't say that eloquently. Do you know which quote I'm talking about, Jay?
I don't know the quote, but I certainly agree with the sentiment.
Yeah, very true.